Guest host Lisa Shorr joins us this week for a special guest interview with Frank Vitagliano, news from Barracuda, Scale Computing, Pulseway, HP, and a whole lot more. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 127, Finance Your Bar Tab. Hello everyone, welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 127. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine audio program for you. And when I say you, I mean the VARs, the MSPs, the integrators, the MSSPs, the MSSECPs, well, if you work with technology and you work with technology with other businesses, you're probably in the right place. At least I would think so. Joining me this week and every week is our co-host, the excellent, the fabulous, the one who makes sport coats and t-shirts work on a level never before seen on this planet, executive editor Rich Freeman.
Or at least never before seen on this podcast. I'll take that.
You are by far the snazziest sport coat wearer in the show right now. But we have another special guest host this week, one who we've had on before as an interviewee, but her first time guest hosting with us, also a very snazzy dresser, I have to add, and also one who can teach you how to be a snazzy dresser, believe it or not. MSPs, this is a woman that you want to get to know, the awesome, the fabulous Lisa Shorr, Vice President of Secure Future Tech Solutions and image consultant and owner of Shorr Success. Welcome, Lisa.
I am so excited to be here in this capacity. I have been interviewed in the past on your podcast, so I'm very excited to be here.
Yes. Interesting to say, one of our more darker moments was when we had an awesome interview with you and forgot to record it.
Listen, it's all in the past. We're here today, and we did re-record it, and we re-recorded. It came out great. So everyone listened for it. So just search me on the ChannelPro site, and you'll find it. Yeah,
we'll definitely drop a link to the episode where we had you on. It was awesome. It was fantastic. And funny though, it's only happened twice, Rich, where we've recorded, and with Lisa we did like the whole thing and then realized at the end. But there was someone else we kind of got like 10 minutes in and then realized it, right?
I think it was just you and me, but we started the show, and then at some point you realize, holy cow, we're not actually recording this. We're just talking.
I know the fun parts of producing a show week to week without a producer. the details. Well, Lisa, I am so excited to have you back on with us and to kind of get your insights on some of the stories and some of your thoughts, because the last time we were talking about your more of the Shorr Success side of your business, which I'd love for you to talk a little bit about in a second, and that's kind of about helping MSPs shine and be better people, better to present themselves better as more of a kind of as a brand. But you're also vice president of a tech company as an MSP, so you are definitely in the weeds of this stuff.
I am in the weeds for the past 21 years. I met my husband, Eric. He and I run our business together. And so Secure Future Tech is our MSP, and it's 27 years old. We specialize in servicing law firms and property management companies, but we certainly have a wide range of clients. And there's 19 of us on staff. So we're a good-sized company. I totally understand the need. Today's conversation seems to be very RMM-based, and so we can't live without our technology and our evolution. And it's been a really cool experience, and ChannelPro has been a huge benefit for us just to stay on top of technology and what we need and what's in the news. So, and then the other side is Shorr Success, and it's an image consulting business. And I work with other MSPs and IT professionals on making them shine. So it could be with what they're wearing, or sales presentation skills, or just getting up and delivering a cybersecurity talk and just not sure how to do that. I help coach on all of that.
Wow, 27 years for your MSP business. In like 3 years, you're going to have to go get it its first cholesterol test.
27 years and one rebrand. So yeah, we started as PC troubleshooters. And then, as you can imagine, 27 years ago, that was great. And PCs, that's all we did. We fixed PCs, but that's so not who we are today. And all of our prospects and clients were wondering, well, can you help us? I mean, we want to move to the cloud and we want to be more sophisticated, but you just fix PCs. And we So we had to rebrand. And so in 2013, I did the whole research process, and it takes quite a while to brainstorm new names and research and all of that. And then 2014, we launched Secure Future Tech Solutions. I can't tell you the value of a brand. I can't tell you what a name can do for your company. So,
and it's amazing how many business names these days are decided upon whether or not the .com URL is available.
Yes, actually, we kept PCTrouble.com because a lot of companies still had it. And then when we were trying to figure out Secure Future Tech, we looked at one of them. I can't remember which one. It was back in 2014, but one of the URLs we wanted was actually not available. And we had to make the expensive decision. Did we want to pay $1,000, whatever it was? I don't even remember at the time. But so we ended up at securefuturetech.com. So perfect.
And it's a great name and quite descriptive. Now the short success side of your business, how long have you been doing that?
So I started that in 2012. I launched that in 2012, and I've been growing it. It's part-time because I'm still here. So I'd say probably 60-40, 60% of my time is still entrenched in the tech world. And I recruit here. I'm doing all the marketing and branding here, operational stuff here. So there's a lot to do, but I can't dismiss the fact that I just love seeing people shine. I love seeing people on the stage. I love when they can articulate and speak and sound clear and confident and look their part. And sometimes MSPs have issues with their engineers that just, they would prefer to be behind technology, hiding and sounding soft, or they just talk too technical and they don't talk in a level that their client understands. So it's been a very fun adventure. And
so between you and me, Rich's wardrobe choices,
I like authoritative. Jackets are always authoritative. So always. And I thought about that, what I was going to wear today on the podcast. I can imagine you probably thought I did, but maybe you didn't. But I really put some thought into how do I want to dress today for the podcast? Did I want to wear a suit to be authoritative? Or did I want to dress in line? I mean, I think, Rich, because I like that you wear jeans and your sport coat. So I think that's very in line with the IT industry. And for me, I'm always wearing some sort of a statement necklace or something. And I put a sweater on today versus a jacket because most of my peers are not wearing jackets and suits and stuff. So I just try to dress relatable and approachable too. So, but that's not to say, Rich, that you should change your jackets, because I wouldn't, because you're, as executive director or executive editor, there's a level of authority there. And I think that you and Michael Siggins always dress well for that.
It's a look he pulls off. I can definitely say that if there's anyone on this show that needs more fashion help, it's definitely me. Because I probably don't put enough thought into it. And I kind of dress for comfort. My typical t-shirt and button-down shirt kind of untucked is kind of my standard. Usually it's some kind of nerd t-shirt underneath.
And that's the industry standard too. So at least you're groomed. You're very nicely groomed.
Well, thank you very much. I just hit myself with the electric razor right before we started, so I didn't look like a hobo.
Thank you for that.
What were you going to say, Rich?
Well, I was just curious because you were talking about Shorr's success before, and I'm just wondering, do you remember the inspiration, the moment it was when you thought to yourself, you know what, I can help with this, and somebody kind of needs to help?
You know what it was? I was sitting in my tech desk. So it actually, back in 2010, I went to a talk just at like a restaurant, and she was talking about just dressing on a budget, dressing for success and whatever. She totally bought clothes from Target, had tags on everything, returned everything, but did the presentation. I said, who's this woman? I'm going to get on her mailing list. Not because I was going to hire her, but because I just connected with that inspiration. Like, I can do this. I can talk about this. I'm doing it at my business already. And then she then offered a class, an online 6-week class 2 years later. And I took that class. I was sitting in my tech desk, I'll never remember, and it said, do you want to be a stylist in the subject line? And I'm like, yeah, I think I do. And I took it was all online. I had younger children then. And then my degree is in marketing. And so to be a marketer, really it helps to specialize in target audiences and industry. So to answer your question, Rich, after I took all of the training and I know on our podcast in the past, I talked about my closet clean out, war stories and different, stories that I did, I realized that really if I'm going to be focusing on this and building this business, I have to focus on the IT industry. It's who I know. I'm 20 years in this industry, and what better person to have skills and training that are not prevalent in our industry to then take it to market. So it was pretty early on, I realized that the IT industry, I do this with my engineers now. I do this with my husband, Eric. I have an accountability group that I've helped and supported on phone skills training and all of that. And I've helped many MSPs, a couple of them just the past few months. They had to deliver a cybersecurity talk and they had no idea how to do it, what to say, how to make the slides look interesting. And so all virtually. I do a lot via Zoom because both of these companies are in California. And, it works. So have technology, we'll train, we'll coach, we'll shine. Mm-hmm. Oops, you're on mute, Matt.
I sure am. Well, it's great that you're here with us, and we've got a really exciting show coming up. So let me just kind of quickly go over what we got. We've got 4 news stories today. We got some stuff with Barracuda, Scale Computing, Pulseway, and HP that we're going to talk about. We also have a fantastic interview with Frank Vitagliano from the GTDC that we're going to get to here a little later on. We kind of recorded that before we started the show. So, but it's a fantastic interview, absolutely worth sticking around for. We are also going to, if there's time, we're going to play 5 questions with Lisa Shorr. She has no idea that this is coming. So that'll be fun. And of course, we have a museum pick, but not from my museum, from Ms. Lisa Shorr's museum. So also going to be really exciting. A tech pick and some more. So everybody strap in and get ready because we're going to get rolling right now. First story up. Barracuda is in the news. They are integrating managed workplace RMM with a web filtering solution. Rich, tell us about that.
Well, so think back to earlier in the year. So Barracuda Networks is best known as a maker of backup and security products. You go back to about February, and they surprised folks. They went to Avast, and they purchased an RMM product from Avast called Managed Workplace. Now, old timers, folks who've been in the MSP world for a long time, remember Managed Workplace as a product originally from Level Platforms, and Level Platforms got acquired by somebody who got acquired, AVG, who got acquired by Avast, and then Barracuda bought this one particular product, Managed Workplace, from Avast. And the question was, well, what are they planning to do with it exactly? And that strategy has been sort of unfolding slowly. There was a big step forward just a couple of months ago where they released version 12 of the product. And you really kind of got to look at what they're trying to do. And what they're trying to do basically is turn Managed Workplace into the most security-focused RMM product out there. And the main way that they're doing that is by integrating their security products very, very closely with the Managed Workplace interface so that you don't have to exit that interface to get important security information. And if you do need to exit, it's very easy to get out, et cetera. So what they announced this week was that they have now integrated a product called Content Shield with Managed Workplace. Content Shield is a web filtering product that started out as a sort of a DNS filtering tool. More recently, just within the past few months, they added this software agent to it that you can install locally on endpoints. And that basically allows you to protect those endpoints when they're off the corporate network. So they've added mobile protection to that product and some other capabilities that go a little bit beyond some of the other DNS filtering systems I'm familiar with out there. But that, it has been part of the Barracuda portfolio since September 2018. Now that they have added the ability to deploy those software agents via Managed Workplace out to endpoints, they've also added kind of a dashboard to Managed Workplace that pulls in some key threat information and status information from Content Shield and displays it in the same console where MSPs are spending a lot of their time. So this is the newest kind of integration from Barracuda. Earlier this year, I think it was in September, they announced that they have integrated their Intronis backup product. When they bought Managed Workplace, they also bought the rights to integrate Avast's antivirus solution with it. So they've got kind of those three bases covered right now: antivirus, backup, and web filtering. And they plan essentially to integrate every other security-related product that Barracuda makes with that product at some point down the road, with Managed Workplace down the road. A little hard to say exactly how long it's going to take them to do that. I asked, 12 months from now, how many of the Barracuda products do you think will be embedded in Managed Workplace? And they said a significant portion. So I guess a majority. But at some point down the road, pretty much anything security-related that they make will be embedded to at least some extent within Managed Workplace. And according to Barracuda, at least, this will differentiate the product from the many other RMM systems out there, from ConnectWise and Kaseya Datto, et cetera, is that it's a security-first RMM platform.
Seems like the more we go, the more and more stuff just gets integrated into the RMM. Like, Lisa, as an RMM user, how important is integrations like this, where RMM tools have become more expansive into other areas where you typically rely on other tools?
We need them we're using the portal for everything now. I mean, we're looking at when my engineers are on and we're doing updates, it would be great to have one portal. I don't think this is I didn't read that this is necessarily a single sign-on, but just to have efficiencies in one portal, to have to do any updates and all of that. If it makes it easier for my engineers to do that, then I would rather them have it in one portal. I am interested in learning, though. I mean, I know, Rich, you're saying that they are, they're building in more security features, but so is, we're not Barracuda partners, we're Continuum partners, and they also offer a lot of the security solutions as well. So I'm curious to see how their goal of being the premier security focused will actually, what the outcome will end up being. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good question. So that their premise basically is by integrating their security products with the RMM, they can set themselves apart a little bit from competitors. But you're absolutely right. They are far from the only RMM maker that has security embedded in the RMM tool. And you mentioned Continuum. Continuum has its own portfolio of security products that they've integrated.
And they have SentinelOne too, just like, Barracuda has SentinelOne. So,
yeah,
there's a lot of comparison. So I'm curious to see how they end up.
And the other example that leaps to mind is ConnectWise, which does not. Now, ConnectWise owns Continuum now, and so that story gets complicated. But if you take that out of the equation for a minute here, ConnectWise has been building this very open platform and an ecosystem of third parties, including big names, Webroot, Acronis, and all these companies, and they've been making it possible for those vendors to embed their functionality inside the ConnectWise Automate interface. And so I don't use any of these products myself. It's impossible for me to kind of do an apples to apples comparison. Is there tighter integration maybe on the Barracuda side than is possible with something like ConnectWise? Does it make a difference? I can imagine Barracuda saying, we own all the source code. So it's not an API level integration. It's a deep source code level integration. And that enables us to do special things. But I am curious to know more about what it is that really does make Managed Workplace the premier security first kind of RMM platform, given that, as you say, they're not the only people that do something at least like this.
Right. That was how that's my take on the article. I was just like, how can they say that they're going to differentiate themselves when everyone is building in? I mean, if you can't go today and not be security focused, you cannot be valid in the industry and not be security focused. So.
Well, that's absolutely true. Security is definitely kind of like the number one area of focus for MSPs as well as vendors into hardening their products and making it easier to do security stuff. So what we will put a link to that article. And by the way, we'll put a link to every article that we're talking about. If you're listening to the audio version, just go to channelpronetwork.com, find the episode page for episode 127, and you'll see the links there. And then that way you can follow along and kind of read a little bit more of the in-depth stuff as we talk about it and try to give some insight. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also go to the description area, open that up, and we'll put all the links to the stories in there. So as you watch, you can follow along and kind of read a little bit more of the nitty-gritty details that are in some of these articles. The next thing we're going to talk about is scale computing, which, they're selling Nooks with something on it. Rich, what's the something?
So Scale Computing is a hyperconverged infrastructure company. They have both the software and appliances they install that on. There's been a big point of emphasis at that company recently in this still fairly new HC3 Edge platform, which is their new edge computing hyperconverged infrastructure platform. And what they announced this week is the latest addition to that product family. And it's actually kind of a few additions, but what you're alluding to there is a new appliance, a new form factor called the HE150, and it is built on an Intel Nook. So it's a very small, very compact device. They have introduced a new technology that they're calling the HC3 Edge fabric, which basically allows the HE150 to connect to the network without needing to link to a network switch. So the end result, basically, obviously when you're dealing in edge computing environments, space is at a premium. There's often not IT staff available on site. Power constraints can be an issue. And so they've come up with something that's really, really small. I mean, if you've seen an Intel Nook before, you know how small that is. If not, Scale says, think of it as basically the size of 3 smartphones stacked on top of one another. Very compact form factor. Doesn't require a lot of power, very easy to install, very easy to connect to a network. And so it can go pretty much anywhere. Meanwhile, they have also licensed the software or made the software available for licensing. So if a third-party hardware maker wants to create their own NUC-based hyperconverged solution using the Scale software, they can do that too. And there's a deal that they announced with Lenovo in particular to do something along those lines. And then, last but not least, it's actually their most affordable edge computing device as well. We probably talked on the show, actually, at some point earlier this year, I want to say June, Scale came out with another HC3 Edge product called the HE500. And for a 3-node cluster of those, it was like $16,500. You can get a 3-node cluster of this new HE150 product for $5,000. And it's a scale-out architecture. You can just kind of keep tacking these boxes on as your scale requirements or the number of remote sites and so on that you're supporting increases. So interesting product, interesting, very, very edge-specific form factor.
Yeah, and Lisa, are you doing a lot of work with edge computing and those kinds of environments?
I don't know. Actually, no, not a lot. And I was wondering, where would I deploy this? Like, what are some of the environments or the situations? Have you talked to other MSPs, Rich, about where I can implement this and how this would be beneficial for other MSPs?
Well, think about for me at least, my mind always goes to IoT when I'm talking about edge computing. Yep. And so if you think about things like IP surveillance cameras, for example, and just any kind of environment where you've got a sensor or a camera or some other kind of remote device. And you need some computing power locally out where it is. It's not just sort of collecting data and feeding it to the cloud. But again, you don't have maybe access to IT resources, and there's no server closet or data center out there somewhere, and you just need something that you can mount on a wall very easily, and it's not going to take up a lot of space and just be very easy to deal with. So I mean, there are a lot of edge computing products out there right now, but my impression certainly is most of them are significantly larger than this. And so the interesting quality about this one is just how compact it is.
Well, I just took a ton of notes, so stay tuned on that one for me. That's for sure, especially since, we're a surveillance shop. So we do have a surveillance sign, and so this is something newer for us this scale computing product is newer for us. So thank you.
Yeah, a good example of where you need edge computing. Surveillance is an easy one to talk about because if you can imagine, you're not just recording surveillance video and dumping it to a NAS or somewhere in the cloud, but you have an AI inference model that's examining the video in real time and taking action based on that. That would be an area where you would want some kind of computing at the edge, because you don't want to feed all that video up to the cloud and process it there, because it would just be really expensive to do it that way.
Right.
So you're seeing a lot more of these types of devices. The Intel Nook is, we have a long storied history with the Nook. We've been covering it since the first one in 2013 or 2014, somewhere in there. A very versatile product line. Lots of power in a very tiny form factor, usually 4x4. They've got a couple others that are a little bit wider than they are deep, but lots of power there. Now, I have never really considered the Nook to be a very ruggedized solution, Rich, and we're seeing a lot of ruggedized edge products, because where they're being deployed, it's usually not environment friendly, as you said, high moisture or dirty or dusty, or things where you need something that's a little bit or temperature, big temperature swings, for example, industrial automation and those types of places. Is this do you consider this a ruggedized solution, Rich, or is this something a little different?
I was wondering about that myself. They don't actually use that word. They don't talk about that issue much. We are looking at a picture of the device now, and it has apertures. It's not exactly shielded from the elements and dust and so on. But they do emphasize that this is for use in remote sites and industrial settings and so on. So I'm sure they have some kind of answer to that in terms of how you protect it from the elements. But it's certainly not something that they have been emphasizing so far in the marketing materials, that this is a ruggedized form factor.
Yeah, and obviously the big play here is that it runs their HC3 Edge software. And you said that they licensed that out for other things, and you may have not meant this specifically, but you said for you, if you want to build your own Nook, but I imagine you could use any tiny computer, right?
I think yes, but I think what is new and that they've announced here is that they have this. They must have adapted the software to fit into that device. Essentially, this is a hyperconverged infrastructure platform. There's a lot going on there. That software that they're using on their Nook-based product is available for somebody else if they want to build a Nook-based hyperconverged infrastructure appliance too. So that probably variation of the software.
Gotcha. And my last question, the HC3 Edge fabric, is that machine washable?
Only on the cold cycle, but yes.
Dry clean only.
Dry clean only. Lisa, you have any questions about the Intel Nook?
No, I really wanted to know. So how do I use it? Where do I deploy it? This is a newer technology that's introduced to me. And I know my team is familiar with virtualization and all of that, but not this particular product. So thank you. I took a bunch of notes, actually, as you were talking.
Yeah, the fact that it's scalable and the fact that it is so small, this is probably the smallest Edge device I've seen at this point. And man, Nooks are so great because you can slap them on anything, and they have a lot of compute power in a very small package. And the fact that they're scalable means you can pretty much have an infinite number of power available in a very small package.
And it seems like you can deploy them anywhere, which I think is a huge factor. Where we came from, massive servers and on-premise would take up, data rooms and just the computers on your desk, and now it's gotten so tiny. It's just amazing that it allows us to just be more flexible with our deployments and our solutions.
You talk about deploying them anywhere, and it kind of calls to. I remember when we first started covering the Nook, Matt, and we were constantly talking about all the cool things people were doing with this device when it was brand new. And one of the things was there were people installing them in their car, and it was like you could store all your audio on the device, and it just makes me think, gosh, you could actually install the scaled. You could put a hyperconverged infrastructure platform in your SUV now.
Because that's what we need.
That's what we need. Is a data center.
And actually, you know what though? We laugh and jest, but imagine, look where the automotive industry is going with self-driving cars and all that kind of stuff. You're gonna need edge computing in a lot of these like autonomous vehicles and stuff that are being built.
Well, Audi's got a new electronic car coming, and you've got Teslas, and they're all computer based. So
Anything that's self-driving is going to need much more horsepower than a car normally has. So yeah, interesting stuff.
On this in a couple of years, and we'll talk about it in the automotive industry and how it's changed. So
it's all coming. We're going to be installing hyperconverged servers in our pets coming up soon, so we can do AI modeling on their hair growth. I don't know. I just said that because I was showing off my cat earlier. All right, we're gonna move on. Interesting stuff. So, of course, this link is available if you want to read this story on the show sheet. ChannelProNetwork.com is the website. Next story: Pulseway has a new endpoint backup solution. Rich, tell us about this.
Well, and as Lisa pointed out, we're back to RMM. We're back to the managed services tools here. So Pulseway is a lesser known, a somewhat smaller company than the ConnectWises and Dattos of the world, but they've certainly been around a number of years now. They have a steadily expanding suite of products for MSPs. So they started out with RMM and added PSA. They have their own backup tool, a security solution. They do, in fact, have a backup solution that they've been offering for a while, and that's really more of a business continuity BDR kind of solution that is based on technology from Unitrends. So, the appliance-based virtual failover kind of business continuity solution. But what they didn't have until now was a direct-to-cloud endpoint backup solution, something that would just protect your files and folders essentially straight into the cloud and let you recover from the cloud. And they have closed that gap, if you will, in the portfolio. This apparently was the number one request from Pulseway partners. The thing that they most wanted Pulseway to add to the suite was a cloud backup solution. And that system, which is called Pulseway Cloud Backup, is now available. And from a features and functionality standpoint, there aren't a ton of things that it does that it does differently, or in addition to beyond what you might find out there in another endpoint backup kind of solution. What really kind of differentiates it is just if you are a Pulseway user, this is going to be deeply embedded within the tools that you're already using, and to the extent that you're using its own interface as opposed to accessing it through the RMM, that interface looks and works exactly the same way as the other interfaces that you're used to. So, but very low training overhead there. It's really designed from the ground up to kind of fit within the workflows that a Pulseway RMM user is already used to. So that's kind of the big thing and the big advantage to this product. If you're an existing Pulseway user, this is a really easy kind of way to tack cloud backup onto what you're doing today. And like everything else Pulseway makes, the origin story of Pulseway, which I sometimes like to tell, there was an IT guy, an IT professional in Dublin, Ireland, who got frustrated because every time one of the servers he was responsible for taking care of had a problem, on the weekend or at night, he had to go leave the pub or whatever he was doing and get himself to a workstation so he could remote in and diagnose the problem. And he just wanted to know, why can't I do this from my phone? I've got the phone right here. Why can't I just fix it from my phone? And he couldn't find anything that had the capabilities that he was looking for. And so he created it. Eventually, he realized everybody needs this. He turned it into a product and then expanded into PSA, et cetera. So everything about Pulseway from the very, very beginning is sort of mobile friendly. And that's true of this cloud backup solution as well. So if you need to add an endpoint to it when you're out on the go and all you have with you is your phone, if somebody, a customer calls you up and they've lost a file and they need to get it back and you're on the go, all you have is a phone, you can do that straight from the phone. It's a very mobile friendly product.
Yeah, and think about all of the great products and services and technologies that were created simply because somebody didn't want to leave the bar.
Yeah. The hidden role of the evolution of the channel.
Now, Lisa, have you opted for one RMM solution over another?
Oh, yeah, I left the bar.
You ended up having to leave the bar. Do you have to leave the bar now, though, with your current?
No, I'm not going to tell you what's in my mug, but I did leave the bar. That's for another discussion. Sorry. Go right ahead. Sorry.
Well, we know with that one guy, it was Irish cream that was in his coffee. That's for sure. So, Lisa, you have, okay, I see the benefit here. My question is though, is that if you're using Pulseway or any RMM, wouldn't you already have some kind of backup solution by now that has cloud capabilities, or no?
I think that the big point here is that, from what Rich mentioned, is yes. I mean, most MSPs offer some sort of backup to their client. That was like one of the original solutions that we offered when we became the as a service model, or just disaster recovery model. The backup and disaster recovery was sort of the first phase, one of the first phases of cybersecurity, I'd say. And so, yes, so people absolutely have some sort of a backup solution. What we're seeing is that we're just seeing the evolution of how we service clients. I mean, the demand from our clients is that we have to be mobile. We have to, the response time. I mean, that's one of our biggest, when you look at it like testimonials, if you gather testimonials from clients, I'm thankful that one of the main things that we see in those testimonials is our response time. So to be able to manipulate any kind of changes, additions, or to the backup, data, whatever I can get from a mobile phone or from any device allows me to service my clients and meet their expectations in a much more meaningful way and a responsive way. So you're right. I mean, we should all, as good stewards, as good MSPs, have some sort of backup solutions. So I'm interested in really understanding when I would deploy. You know, is it better for, because I think this article was more small business based, right? Doesn't this benefit more the small business, Rich? Or did I not read that correctly, where it can be for any size company that this can be deployed for?
Let me see here, because I mean, we can actually talk a little bit about pricing and capacity, which might sort of help answer that a little bit. So there are basically two ways you're paying for it. It will back up files and folders on workstations and on servers. On the workstation side, it's a flat $10 per device per month for up to a terabyte of data. On the server side, what they're selling it in these 500 gigabit or gigabyte blocks, essentially, and you can just buy as many of those as you need. But for 90 days of retention on 500 gigabytes, $52 a month. If you need a year of retention, it goes up to $57. If you want unlimited retention, it goes up to $83. So, I mean, maybe that'll put listeners into a zone in terms of small versus mid-sized kind of business that they're thinking a terabyte of workstation data, 500 gigabytes of server data, and so on. But I think, without knowing for sure, that it's fair to say Pulseway tends to work with somewhat smaller, newer MSPs who might in turn be working with somewhat smaller.
That's what I thought.
Well, but I wouldn't want to state that too definitively.
Right. Don't categorize that. Yeah, I was looking at that pricing saying, ooh, I like that price, because, thinking about how I would then turn around and price it. So as a managed model, if you're doing it as a service model, the margins are much greater. And if that's truly the case, then why not, depending on how competitive the deal, mark it up to $15, $20 anyway. So that could be just something to think about.
Yeah, a lot of room for margin in there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Rich, I'm reading the description of this new backup model. One thing that it seems missing to me is a little bit more on the disaster recovery side. I'm seeing a lot of these products these days being able to like spin up a VM instantly, and like the maybe not the disaster recovery, the business continuity side of it. So what is that in here, or is that if you want business continuity, you got to go to something else?
So the backup product that Pulseway had before this week, that one that's based on the Unitrons technology, that's the disaster recovery spin-up virtual environment business continuity solution, and that they are still going to offer that. That's not going away. The Pulseway Cloud Backup does not replace that. It complements it basically.
Okay.
It's sort of two different use cases.
Gotcha. All right, excellent. All right, well, we will put a link here to this article in the show notes sheet for those who want to read a little bit more about it and are interested in the new Pulseway direct-to-cloud endpoint backup solution. Last story that we're going to talk about, well, we like to talk about money on this show, and I wish I was talking about more money that was coming my direction. But we're going to talk about HP's money, but HP's, it's the money that HP's lending. So it's kind of like your money, not my money, but their money, but not Lisa's money. Lisa, do you have HP money?
I do not have HP money. No.
Would you like some HP money?
I would. You know what? Absolutely. I will take, you want to give me money? If HP wants to give me money, we'll take them and we'll be very good stewards of it. I promise.
Rich, tell us about HP's money.
It turns out that people like HP money so much that they're just looking for more options, more ways to take it, basically, and pay it back. And so what HP announced this week, and we won't spend a ton of time on this because there aren't lots of really specific kind of granular details to get into, but they did have an announcement where they said that they have extended an existing relationship that they had before with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Financial Services. So HP has its own in-house financial services unit. They have had an existing relationship with HPE Financial Services for a few years now, and they've extended that deal. They're going to continue doing it. They've added a new finance partner called DLL. And really what it all sort of adds up to is just, a further reflection of the demand, both by end users and by channel partners for a wider variety, more financing in general as people are making the transition into services, and more financing options beyond, a standard kind of loan scenario. Leases, which have been around for a long time, but give me more leasing options, give me consumption-based options, give me subscription-based options. I want to be able to choose between plans where the payment is flowing from the customer to me, and then I'm sending it on to HP, or maybe I want the ability to have the customer remit payment directly to HP and take that off my hands. And you white label that invoice so that it looks like it's coming from me, even though it's actually coming from HP. There's a lot of demand. And even just a few weeks ago, we were talking about this in relation to Ingram Micro. They've been making moves to increase the variety and flexibility of their programs. There's just a lot of that going on right now. And it really is just a reflection of how the appetite for as-a-service, subscription-based, unconventional, newfangled purchasing options is growing, to the extent that if you are a company like HP that already has had a device as a service purchasing option since 2016, you're looking for more. You're looking for more, partner relationships, more ways to satisfy the demand for different kinds of financing options.
As an MSP, you are always probably looking for financing. What do you think of this?
I like it for cash flow purposes. I mean, we can give an example of this whole Windows 10 migration right now that's happening, and all of many MSPs who have jumped on the responsible wave of updating their clients' computers to the Windows 10. A lot of them require new boxes, new computers. So, because a lot of the legacy computers that they have aren't going to be supported. So we've ordered hundreds of computers here. And so there's no way our company could outlay all that cash. So we utilize different types of, maybe some leasing options, or, certainly a subscription with the cloud services, but then we use DLL for terms. And it helps us to have 60-day terms versus 30-day terms. So Ingram offers us 30-day terms. But through DLL approval, especially with Lenovo, we have a plan with Lenovo and DLL, and we get 60-day terms. So that helps immensely for us to collect cash from clients and then be able to allocate it, but gives us a little more time to pay. So I think it's crucial, and I think it's smart for HP to build in a component thinking about our cash flow needs.
Yeah, I hadn't really, it's an interesting point you make, because I hadn't really looked too deeply into who else DLL works with. And you mentioned some other names there. So that, an angle on this story that I didn't write about essentially is, in some ways, HP is sort of leveling the playing field there. If you like getting those longer terms from DLL, and you had that option with Lenovo before, you now have that option with HP too.
Right. So it offers you another, if you want to have a second partner, I mean, yeah, so we've been selling Novo for a long time, but if we wanted to now also offer HP, then I like that there's financing or special terms that we could take advantage of. It's important for us. We're running a small business here. Cash is king, as they say, and the ability to not defer payments, but to stretch them out as long as possible while we're collecting payments from clients, then so it helps quite a bit.
No question.
All right. Well, that's pretty much all there is to talk about financing. We all know if you're an MSP, you need it, and if they're offering it, you may as well take it. Does that sound like sage advice, Lisa?
Back to the bar. Cheers.
Back to the bar. You can finance at the bar. Even better.
Make a deal.
I don't know if HP will finance your bar tab, though, but you could try. How would you invoice that to make it sound technological? Is there any drinks that are like technological sounding?
I don't know, but you could be creative and you can do MDF funding, marketing development funds from and say you're having a big event. But no. I've never done that. No.
That's the new way. I'm not
getting myself in trouble here. I'm not going to do it.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have a great interview with Frank Vitagliano from the GDTC, kind of on the future of distribution. Very, very interesting. Very, very great. So everybody stick around, and we will be right back. All right, and we are back, and we have a special guest interview today. I'd like everyone to welcome, he's on the phone with us, Frank Vitagliano, CEO of the Global Technology Distributor Council, or GTDC for short. Welcome, Frank.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic. So why don't, for people who don't know you, give a little background on who you are and your company.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. So I've been in the industry for quite some time, probably more years than I actually want to say, but and many of it, or most of it actually, in the indirect channels area. I was the channel chief for IBM, for Juniper Networks, and for the Americas channel chief for Dell. And then after that, I took a role as a CEO for a pretty good-sized regional solution provider, an MSP called Computex out in Houston. And then earlier this year, I took the role as the CEO of the Global Technology Distributor Council, GTDC, which is basically a trade association whose mission is to promote the value of our member distributors, back into the industry, to the various constituents, in the industry, whether it be the vendor community, in some cases, solution providers, and certainly the influencers like you folks. And our members, we've got 21 members. They represent about $150 billion of revenue. So, many, and frankly, most of the large distributors that we all know and love, all the big 4 or 5 global ones, England Tech Data, Synex, Arrow, D&H, and then a number of regional or in-country players in Europe.
So, and we were talking about this off the air just before we started recording here. You are actually in precisely the perfect position, and this is precisely the perfect time to have you on the podcast right now, because distributors and distribution have been in the news a lot lately. And at the same time, just within the past few weeks, the GTDC published a new report called Tech Distribution 2025. It's a very interesting, thorough kind of look ahead to where distribution has been, where it is, and also where it's going. But let's maybe start with your sort of knowledge of the distribution space. I'm really eager to get your perspective on what is the big sort of distribution story in the news and the headlines recently. So just a few weeks back, we find out that Apollo Global Management, a very big private equity firm, has put a bid out for Tech Data worth, I want to say, $5.4 billion at that time. The valuation of the deal has changed since then. And now we know that Apollo will, in fact, buy Tech Data, but we also found that there was a competing bid that came in after that initial one from none other than Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. So there is some pretty serious interest in distribution right now from some pretty serious investors. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, what's driving that? What makes a company like Tech Data and a company like Ingram Micro, which we've been told at least has been approached by investors before, what makes these companies so interesting right now to investors?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it goes back to, you mentioned our recent, report, that white paper that we prepared called Tech Distribution 2025. And in it, we talk about a lot of what I think is driving this. And so I'll start with a couple of things. So, some of the key takeaways that were in the report were that, and we talked to, a large number, we talked to more than 50, executives in the space. And those executives ranged from legacy vendor, kind of companies, emerging technology, kind of companies, certainly solution providers, some distributors, venture capital folks, which ties right into your question, frankly. And some of the key takeaways that we saw in the report, which was done in the, let's think about this, we released it, was probably done in the June, July, August timeframe, I think is what's driving a lot of what you're seeing. And they are as follows. So 61% of the folks who were surveyed felt like their business with distribution would grow more than 10% annually over the next 5 years. And that's pretty significant, when you look at the traditional growth rates, and clearly when you look at the growth rates from an overall, IT industry, in particular. The second thing that was really not surprising, but it was good to see it sort of validated, is that a lot of that growth was tied to all of the areas and all of the emerging technology spaces that we all have known to, come to know and love, like, cloud and security, IoT, big data, potentially AI and machine learning. So these areas are clearly areas that everybody in the space acknowledges are huge growth areas. And the feeling was that because of the complexity of these technologies and because of the services and support that distributors have been traditionally providing in the sort of more, core legacy areas, that distribution with the investments they're making will continue to be able to provide those level of services and support that's needed in the marketplace, which, we all felt was the case, but it was good to see it validated. And then the third key point, though, that was really, really important and lots of times gets, I think, is either misunderstood or certainly undervalued, is the distributors have built up core competencies over the years that are extraordinarily significant and cannot be replicated by, other folks in the supply chain. I can tell you, watching it from a vendor viewpoint, in executive positions for years, companies struggle trying to replicate, those core competencies. And what was really good to see is the report really showed that those competencies are still valued in a very significant way. And what distribution's been able to do is build on those, add investments into key areas in emerging technologies, and as a result, the viewpoint is that it's really a good place to be, and it's a very exciting business. And And I think that's some of what you saw with the recent deal with Tech Data. And also 2 years ago, Ingram was taken private by HNA. And so that's pretty significant activity.
It's really, and I'm sure I've spoken about this before on the podcast, from a sort of mega trends point of view, one of the most interesting kind of compelling storylines of the last few years is the success with which distributors have sort of pivoted from the previous era of IT, if you will, to the new era defined by those technologies you were just kind of talking there, cloud and IoT and big data and so on. There was a time in the not too distant past when a lot of smart people thought distribution is irrelevant, or it's going to be irrelevant soon because pick, pack, and ship is just not going to be what channel partners need anymore. And it's just been really interesting watching them in different ways, but similar sort of ways, transition along with IT into this new era of technologies out there. How would you describe, how has the role that distribution and distributors play in relation to channel partners evolved along with the introduction of those new technologies?
Yeah, well, you're right about. I kind of grin every time I hear people mention what you just said, because as I mentioned earlier, I've been doing this a long time, and for the vast majority of the years that I've been doing this, distribution was going to be disintermediated, right? In other words, they were going to be, for any number of reasons, their services, their value was not going to be needed in the future, and that has continually proven to not be the case. And it kind of, pardon me?
I said I agree with that as an MSP.
Yeah. Yeah, and it started early on, because and one of the things that we do in this report is we start with, sort of where it started, which was in what we call the components in the system era, which could go back, you could go back as far as 1930 if you wanted to, if you're talking about, Arrow was kind of involved in, the radio parts, if you will. But realistically, back in the 70s and 80s, let's say, in the beginning of the sort of PC days, it became very clear that vendors needed distributors to help them get product to market. And the things that this distribution did, like inventory management, logistics, transactional support, and obviously financing, all tied with operational excellence, proved to be extraordinarily valuable. And I can tell you, having been in the early days of the IBM PC evolution, I can tell you how valuable distribution was back in those days, just getting product to market. And so nobody kind of debated that, because to your point, it was pick, pack, and ship back then, right? Finance. But then as it evolved into what we call kind of the solutions era, then it became, that was one of the areas where disintermediation was going to start. And it obviously didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen is distribution morphed their services and added integration services, added global logistics, added channel development. I know as a vendor executive, I relied on distribution to help me find partners, to help me vet various partners, and really to help me, kind of grow my go-to-market capabilities. And they could do it better than I could because they had all the relationships in place. And then they also provided, some pretty significant pre and post-sale technical support, as well as marketing support and field support. And again, now, incremental value add that, evolved and they were not disintermediated. And now we're into the digital era. And what people are beginning to find is that those core competencies are sort of the foundational elements. And on top of those, distribution is now making huge investments in, cloud marketplaces, in IoT, in providing support in, AI and machine learning, and whether it's technical resource support, whether it's logistics support, the core competencies that have been built over the last, I'll call it 30 years or so, it's probably longer, but let's say 30 years, are extraordinarily important. And the fact is there's scale there. See, that's the other piece that's really important people have to understand. Distributors have developed that level of scale, and they've developed relationships. And I can tell you, I valued this as a vendor executive, but when I became a solution provider, I really valued it, because then I became a customer of distribution. And I started realizing very, very quickly and very personally the kinds of things that they could do to help my company grow, areas where I didn't have to make investments, that I could leverage the investments they've made and get it in a very efficient way, get that support. That's what I think is continuing to happen. And it'll continue to evolve as folks continue to make investments, and they're doing it now at, pretty significant scale. So that's what's been going on. And so the disintermediation story, I laugh at it because it clearly has not taken place, and I do not believe it will.
You mentioned financing as something that distributors have done for a long, long time. The depth of the relationships, the vendor relationships that distributors have. We could also talk about, and this has become, from my perspective, more of a point of emphasis in recent years, but distributors have gotten really big into outsourced services. And so the ability of a channel partner to outsource parts of the supply chain or the delivery process that maybe they don't have the skills for in-house to a distributor. And all of this kind of goes to the IoT solutions, cloud solutions, and some of what's necessary for a channel partner to transition maybe from an older kind of pure resale business model to more of a services-led business model, which so many of them are looking to do right now. So, speak a little bit more about the maybe unique role that distributors play right now in helping channel pros make that switch to a next generation services-led business model.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and I'll give you a real life example. So when I was running a solution provider, and again, it wasn't a small company; it was a pretty good sized company. What would invariably happen is that any number of my legacy customers, folks that I'd been doing business with for a long time, but doing business with in a traditional way, meaning, I was building a data center for them, or I was providing them with infrastructure, products and support. And it was primarily what we would call a kind of a hardware business with a sprinkling of services, in there. Those customers would come to me invariably and ask me to help them with, their cloud strategy or their IoT strategy. And of course, the last thing you're going to say to a legacy customer is, no, I can't help you, because it opens the door for them to find somebody else who's going to help them. And then all my business will go away. So I immediately would say, absolutely, we can help you with that. And then go try to figure out how the heck we were going to do it. And what I ended up having to do, because the solution providers have a limited capability to make significant investments. And what's happening in the marketplace today is, because of the complexity of the solutions, if you want to go decide you're going to develop a practice, for example, in IoT, first thing you got to go do is you got to go hire a few solution architects and people that understand the technology, understand the space, understand the environment, and in some cases understand the verticals. Well, they don't come cheaply. Those folks in the marketplace today are coming at a pretty significant rate. And most solution providers can hire one, maybe two folks in an area like that. And then you add to it security and all the complexity associated with that, and cloud and et cetera, et cetera. And you quickly realize, as a solution provider, I cannot make these bets. I cannot do it. I can make one of them perhaps, but I can't make three or four because the return on the investment typically is 18 months or so before you can really monetize the value and develop a practice that ultimately is is profitable. And so as a result, a lot of solution providers are looking at distribution. And what they're looking for is, can you help me? Can you help me with technical resources? Can you help me with, easily packaged sort of solutions that I can go to market with? In some cases, can you help me with financing? There's a couple of programs out there that a few of the distributors have where they're really providing incremental financing, where folks can use some dollars that they're generating off MSP contracts that are in the future to make some investments. So things like that. And the thing that's most important about it is when you go to your distributor, you're going to them as a partner. You're not going to them as a potential competitor. So you don't have to worry about that because, none of them are going to market directly. So there's no competitive scenario, included in it. And so it becomes a scenario where your success, they feel like your success is part of their success. And so you're joined at the hip relative to, the investments required and the return. And it's a very comforting feeling knowing that you've got a really big partner, one you've had in many cases a 15 or 20-year relationship with, who's now helping you very specifically grow your business in areas that are critical. And to your point, the solution providers have got to make those transitions, because if they don't, they are mired in a hardware-driven sort of model that really isn't growing that much. That's clearly been the growth has really been stunted by the rise in cloud, et cetera. And secondly, is not valued in the marketplace at any multiple that makes sense for them when it comes time for them to consider an exit strategy. So it's all tied together, and it's really important. And the services that Disty are providing really matter today.
So if I could share one quick validation or story, Frank, the one word you said to me that you said was the word leverage. And that really stood out to me, because the way that we leverage our distributor partnership that we have, one story is when we decided we were going to get into the video surveillance business. And we needed someone to train us. We needed help. We needed resources. We needed to send my engineers for training. And so our distribution partner happens to have, I'm in New England, and they happen to have a training site in Buffalo, New York. So I sent my engineers, a couple of them, to Buffalo, New York for a specific training on camera solutions that we were offering. And that was all through my distributor. So that's just one example of how we've evolved our company, more than 20 years ago, starting off just buying computers, absolutely buying those boxes. But we certainly leverage our relationship in so much more of a meaningful way. And all the things that you're explaining, Frank, I agree with so much of it. And it's only growing. I mean, the way that we rely on our distributor today is so different. And it's only going to evolve. The more cloud services that are being offered, the more that you guys or that distributors can help train my engineers, and having one pivotal resource is it's more efficient for us as business owners as well.
Yeah, I certainly know who you're referring to, and I know that I've been in that Buffalo facility, and I know what they have, and I would tell you that you're absolutely right. I'll tell you, it was really interesting. I did a panel not too long ago, and I had 3 executives from 3 of the major global distributors up, and one of the things I said to them was, I said, one of the most frustrating questions that a distribution executive can get from, one of their customers or comments would be, gee, I didn't know you did that. Tell me more about it. and it drives the distributors nuts, because they have so many capabilities. And sometimes, when, for example, when we get on have a discussion like this, I can go through a laundry list of things that they do, and people's eyes just kind of glaze over, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's a bunch of words. And What you just did, though, is you made it come to life, right? Because you're able to use a real life experience of an area that may not be in the forefront of what everybody's trying to do, but it's clearly a skill and a competency that they've built up. And so my major point is, if you've got that relationship, as you grow your business, you're growing it with a partner, and a partner that should be, and I know is, talking to you strategically about how can I help you strategically, not how can I give you a better deal on that, server that you're buying, or, how can I give you a better price on this? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about helping you with a strategy to grow your company and jumping in areas that they can provide support and expertise. That, I think, is what matters to a business executive and an owner, and why I think their business is so relevant, today.
I agree. And by the way, I'll put one word in and one shout out for distribution is also attend their conferences. So we learn a lot. We yearly attend the conferences and to learn and to see what products, because you're absolutely right, Frank. There is so much. You'll probably talk to me and you can probably list a laundry list of things that we probably aren't even taking advantage of yet, but there could be. But those conferences are so valid and so important to attend. So for other MSPs listening out there, please make the time to go, because they're going to be, sharing and releasing all their new information, their new services, and any updates or anything. It's a crucial component to our relationship building with our distributors.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been trying to do, and this is one of the roles that I have as the CEO of a trade association, is it's hard sometimes for an MSP, a solution provider, to attend all four, or 5 or 6 of the major distributor conferences. It's in fact, it's probably not possible, because I experienced the same thing when I was in that space. So what I would tell you is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to have a presence in other areas. And so I have started to attend more of the industry related conferences. So not specifically, the Ingram IM1 conference, or the Tech Data Tech Select, or the Synex event, or an Arrow event, but more specific, more general industry events, and talk about what distribution is doing. And then what I encourage folks to do, similar to what you just did, is to go and spend a little time and decide which distributor or distributors make sense to build a relationship with, and go ahead and do that. Because what's clearly happening is there's investments being made, and like anything, certain folks are better in certain areas than others, or maybe further along in certain areas. And it depends on the specific needs that you might have. So clearly they all can do, as we talked about earlier, pick, pack, and ship and finance. No debate there. And in most cases, all can do very, very well, what I call, phase 2, which is the solutions era stuff, the channel development, the channel enablement, et cetera. But as you're starting to get into the cloud and the digital era, some folks, have made investments in other areas. Some have made more significant investments. And what I encourage MSPs and solution providers to do is spend a little bit of time, get engaged, have the discussion. And to your point, perhaps attending the conference is the right way to do it. But if nothing else, at least figure out how they can help, right? That, I think, becomes really important.
So, Frank, we've talked a little bit about kind of where distribution was and where it is now, which you scratched the surface on it, which is just a whole bunch of services and solutions and things that distributors can do for partners many times they don't even realize or know about. But where do you see the future of distribution going from where it is right now?
I see it. Well, first of all, I see the things that are being done today that have been done for a long time. Those aren't going away, right? And they kind of become table stakes. It's kind of given that those will continue. They'll have to continue. And they shouldn't be underestimated, really, because there are some very significant things that other folks cannot do. However, building upon those, I think what's going to happen going forward is I think it'll morph into much more of a sort of transitioning from a physical to more of a virtual play. Whereas, and what I mean by that is, in the physical space, it was about moving a box. It was, I got to call my distributor and I got to get a box. I got to get a server shipped. I got to get some networking shipped. I got to get a monitor shipped, et cetera. That'll continue. But in addition to that, what's really grown is the virtual side of it, right? The ability to help with, a cloud marketplace, the ability to do aggregation of a number of different services that are required to put a solution in front of a customer. Distribution will be able to do that. In addition, I think there'll be a set of services offered that will be more significant than what we've seen in the past and more robust. And so I mentioned technical support. They're all investing and have invested in technical resources. I think over time, that will become a bigger part of their business. So their quote unquote services element will grow, and it will be, much broader than what we see today, which is, a piece of the business, but still a very small piece as it relates to the total business that they're doing. So it will really end up becoming a lot more of a services play in specific areas, in specific marketplaces, and also for specific verticals in terms of the type of customer that you might be dealing with. They're continually acquiring expertise and skills in those areas. So that's where I see it going. I see it shifting from, heavily hardware dependent to much more virtual and much more services, over the next 4 or 5 years. And that's kind of what our study told us was happening. And, it makes sense when you think about it, because it ties right into the emerging technologies that we're seeing and what's happening in the marketplace. And many of them are software related, and that makes a lot of sense. So the distribution has to make that transition and is doing it very, very well right now.
Well, your report is so telling, and it is so true. And everything you've said, Frank, certainly has been our evolution in this whole process. So from utilizing our distributor in the early days, our company is 27 years old now, but in the early days of just moving those servers, those, Acer computers or whatever we were selling back then, to really now, we get all of our Microsoft Office products. Not only that, but the 365 products, Azure, all of that is through our distributor now. So our dependency on the way that we're partnering and working with our distributor is only going to get stronger and grow, because the cloud solutions are becoming more and more prevalent and required, and security solutions that are required of us now and of our clients, and the demands that are hitting. So I think my favorite slide of the report, Rich, when I read the report, was absolutely the evolution, the building blocks of tomorrow. I love that slide. I related to it completely in terms of how we've shifted, and MSPs are only getting more and more cloud-based. And I would say that we still have a ways to go. We're still going to be hybrid, but the way that we're evolving is certainly not going away in terms of the cloud.
Yeah, and the other comment I would make is that what I have found is that the folks that have a comfort level, working with distribution, that have developed, those relationships over, in some cases 15, 20 years. There are stories that I'm aware of, kind of similar to the one you told, but where, back 15 years ago, a distributor was the only one that would provide credit to, some of these small businesses that were, emerging, if you will, some of the solution providers. And so obviously there's been a degree of loyalty that's been built up over the years because of that. Those folks, I think, get it, right? Those folks understand they're still making the transition, but they get it. And so they know that, you know, their distributor, and generally they usually have 2 or 3 different relationships, but those distribution relationships matter. And to your point, they go to the conference, they understand what they're doing, and then they figure out how it works for them. What I'm also interested, though, is for the sort of the emerging, you know, the MSP that doesn't have a legacy relationship, that only started a business, sort of the born in the cloud folks that you know just started their business over, you know, the last 4 or 5 years, and it's a relatively small revenue-wise, but still, you know, robust number, particularly if it's an MSP. I think it's important for those folks to understand some of the value that can be provided, because I don't know that they understand that. I think in some cases they've underestimated and they've just viewed it as, oh, well, I don't have a need for servers shipped to me or my customer, so I don't know what, you know, one of the distributors that have the global players that have been in business for, you know, a long time, I don't know what they can provide me. And I think it's really important for those folks to step back and spend some time and really understand it, because what will happen over time, I promise, is that as your relationship with your customer grows, not only will there be a need for services that you don't think you need today, but will eventually need, but as you scale, you're going to need somebody that can and will and is able to scale with you. And that's what, you know, the distributor community has been doing for a lot of years. And I think it's really important for folks at all levels of sort of, you know, maturity in their business to really be thinking about how can I get a partner to help me in the next stage of my growth.
That is absolutely true. Fascinating stuff. Unfortunately, Frank, we are out of time. But man, we could talk to you all day. You are just a wealth of information.
Well, I'll be happy to do it again. When you know, we are in the process of developing a couple of follow-on reports to this, because there's some obvious questions as you read this. You know, some of the questions are, well, okay, as we look at this, what happens next? What specifically are some of the areas? You know, how does distribution play in the subscription environment? How does distribution play in more detail in the cloud space, in the IoT space? And so those are some follow-ons that we have scheduled. So as we release those reports, and they'll be throughout 2020, happy to jump back on and talk to you guys.
Oh, we'd absolutely love to have you back. So everyone, that's Frank Vitagliano, CEO of the GTDC, the Global Technology Distributor Council. Frank, if people wanted to learn a little bit more about you, where would they go online?
F Vitagliano at gtdc.org, or go to our GTDC website, which is just that, GTDC.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, Frank. We'd love to have you back. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the end of the show with some regular end of the show type of features. We do have a museum pick this week, but it's not from my museum. Miss Lisa Shorr has a museum pick for us this week. Very, very interesting and exciting. I do have a tech pick for you, and Rich will tell us what has been and what will be. Stick around. We'll be right back. And we are back with part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly with Lisa Shorr, our wonderful guest host. So, Lisa, we're going to play a little game with you before we get into your museum pick, and we kind of wrap the show up. We are going to play 5 questions. Now, this is something that we've done in the past with some other guests. Basically, I'm just going to fire off 5 completely random questions, usually off the top of my head, and just to learn a little bit more about you and what you think and what your brain is like, and like they're more personal questions, but not like personal questions, if you know what I mean.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just, don't know what's going to come out of me, everybody. So let's just stay tuned. Okay.
So this could be great, or it could be a train wreck. We'll let you, the viewer and listener, decide. All right. Question number 1, favorite movie you've seen in the last year?
A Star is Born.
A Star is Born. What did you like about that?
I loved seeing Lady Gaga be herself, or not just the evolution of a star and how a celebrity becomes a star and all the struggles that go through it. And it reminded me of my MSP business and all the struggles and the ups and downs we go through. It's same thing as celebrity status. So I just connected, and I love Lady Gaga.
Very cool. And that does not count as my second question. I just wanted to do a follow-up to see why you like that movie. That was all. So that was not question number 2. Question number 2 is best fast food breakfast sandwich.
Oh my heavens. I don't eat fast food ever. I think that fast food in my kitchen would be an egg and cheese sandwich with melted cheese on it, sliced into squares. So
and what kind of bread do you serve that on?
Sourdough bread.
Sourdough bread, not an English muffin. Interesting.
No. You can't slice it. You got to griddle it in butter and melt the cheese in there, and then you slice it in squares, and yum. A little bit.
You've never had a fast food breakfast sandwich?
Never.
Really?
No, I've had Whoppers. I've had lunch, but not
never
breakfast.
Like an Egg McMuffin, the most basic? No, or anything from Dunkin' at the airport?
Muffins or bagel and cream cheese.
Bagel and cheese. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating, Lisa. Very fascinating.
Not like fast food. Not a big fan.
Fascinating. All right. Dog, cat, or micro pig?
Dog, for sure.
And do you have a dog?
No. My cousin has a dog that I've adopted. His name is Zeus, and he's a toy poodle. And if I was going to get a dog, my children would love for me to get a dog, but I'm not home to take care of a dog. They're not home to take care of a dog. That would be the dog I get. So
you've definitely adopted my model of loving dogs. I always say my favorite kind of dog is somebody else's.
Somebody else's. Absolutely. I love them. I'm all for animal, everything animal, but I'm not home. It wouldn't be fair for me to have a dog right now. Maybe when my children are off and it just be my husband and I, and we have a little time on our hands, I will get a pet, but not right now.
Awesome. All right. Question number 4, your ideal type of vacation.
My ideal type of vacation is one that I have to completely disconnect. So it's either going to be in the middle of the Caribbean, where there is being in technology, it's all I do. It's all we know. It's what, and my children are all phone based, and there's something so serene about not having any Wi-Fi, not having any ability to use your phone, and you just have to connect and be. And it's hysterical watching my children and actually Eric and I, believe it or not, unwind because we have to detox from our phones, total detox. But I think that's really an ideal. Any vacation that requires me to disconnect is my kind of place. So.
Awesome. All right. And final question. Mm-hmm. If there is one easy thing an MSP can do to improve their personal brand, what would it be?
I'd say that one of the things is to really think about the training of their engineers and how everybody in the companies really look at the focus of the company as a whole, people-wise, not just the technologies. We talked about so many technology solutions today. Actually, I liked your article, Rich, that you guys posted this week on all the different, what was it, on Troll? Oh, heavens, I forget it now. I want to say it. But you mentioned an article about all the different solutions and how MSPs can go crazy with so many solutions that you get lost in technology, but you can't get lost in your people. The one thing that you need to focus on is the culture of your company and the people in your company and how they sound. Do they believe in your message? Do they look the part? And just really how they represent your brand. Because if you don't have that, then you can have all the technology in the world, but you won't have business because clients won't trust you or believe in you.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Lisa, for playing 5 questions. It was a lot of fun. Really good insight. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Safe.
I've never met anybody who's like, I don't think I've ever had an Egg McMuffin. That's like, you've never been stuck at the airport and I need a breakfast sandwich. That's
I think
crazy.
Once I had a Dunkin' Donuts egg thing, but I can't even tell you what it's called. So, and it's not often if I have.
That's just awesome. Awesome. Very, very interesting stuff. You get learn a lot about people when you ask them weird questions like that. All right. Moving on. Lisa, normally the museum pick is dedicated to me, where I grab one of the ancient things that I have laying around my office, basement, house, everywhere, because I have a serious hoarding problem. But apparently, I am not the only one harboring some ancient gear. So this week, the museum pick is yours. Lisa, what are you going to share with us today?
So I have I feel like Vanna White. I have a 1982 Sony Watchman. And this is where you put the batteries in here, and it won't work because I think it requires analog or something, and whatever the technology is, it's no longer. But look, we've got antennas, black and white display. So it's amazing how far we've come, right? It's kind of neat, though, that you're able to see something. Your handheld is now this handheld. So, it's a whole different handheld situation. But
so now, is that model, is that the original? Is that the FD210 that you have?
Yes, it is.
That is a keeper. I was telling Lisa before the show that I had an opportunity to get one of those like 10 years ago, and I didn't. And of course, because I have a serious hoarding problem, I'm now kicking myself in the butt for it. But yeah, that has a grayscale 5-centimeter display, very, very tiny, 650 grams, and was sold in Japan for the price of 54,800 yen. I have no idea. What that would be.
I have an app for that. I'll have to put the app in. So 54,000 yen.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be in dollars, especially back then.
I will convert it later.
But obviously, the sad part about that particular kind of product is that it might still work, like you could turn it on, but the type of broadcasts that it could receive and display don't exist anymore. It
doesn't exist. No.
Yeah, so that's kind of a bummer. Did you know, Lisa, that there were 65 different models of the Watchman that were made, but before it finally was discontinued?
Had no idea. I knew this thing was hanging around in our house, and when we had our 25th anniversary, I created a museum table of all the technology from 1992 up until our 25th anniversary. And so this was on our table. I also brought, not so exciting, but a Palm Pilot. Our original. Yeah,
show us that. No, this is a cool one. Yeah,
but our Palm TX Pilot with the stylus and the instructions on how to write on the stylus. So there was a whole bunch. We had a Windows 95 unopened box. We had, I don't even know, we had all kinds of really cool relics on our table. So, but I think this Watchman was our oldest. So.
Yeah, very cool. So the Palm is actually an interesting one. So that was the first Palm that they released after they dropped the Tungsten brand. That one was very late in the Palm life cycle. It started in 2005 and lasted until about 2009. And can you imagine what people were moving to in 2009? What killed it? Come on, anybody?
iPhone?
Yeah, pretty much the iPhone, and a lot of the smartphones at the time had pretty much eliminated the need for a separate handheld device. But that one is a pretty cool one to have because it was one of the last ones that they made. 312 megahertz ARM processor, ARM-based Intel X-Scale back when Intel was making the X-Scale processors. 320 by 480 transflective screen, 65,000 colors, which I don't know if I've shown it off here, Rich, or not, but I do have a Palm 3C. Which was one of the first color Palms, a much older one. That one did not have anywhere near as nice of a screen as that particular one.
Yeah, right.
It built-in 802.11b Wi-Fi in that one. SD expansion slot. So that's a very cool one to have in your collection, Lisa.
Well, I'm sure I have a few more things as well, but I knew that 1982 was going to be a huge hit with you guys.
Oh, that's an awesome one. Yeah. I'm trying to find some actual like detailed specs on it. And because I was curious I wonder if it's even not even an LCD screen. I wonder if it's one of those little micro CRT screens. But
I don't know.
UHF and VHF?
That would be the frequency, the broadcast frequencies that it could receive.
It does require batteries. Let's say.
Yeah, and how many batteries does that take?
4 double A's.
4 double A's.
Or equivalent. So what would or equivalent mean? What would be an equivalent to double A batteries?
Well, maybe like rechargeables. You might have been able to stick rechargeables in there.
Got it. But flat black and white TV is all it says.
Yeah, I wonder if that's one of those little micro CRTs. That's just so cool. So cool. Hold on to that one. Don't lose it.
Don't you worry.
And thank you for bringing those on and showing those and sharing those museum picks with us today. So normally when we do the museum pick, I like to play a little That Was Then, This Is Now. But whenever you're talking about old stuff like Palm Pilots and TV, like micro handheld TVs, those product categories just really don't exist anymore because the smartphone has supplanted so many of those old dedicated devices that we used to carry around for this kind of stuff, you know. And some still exist. Portable gaming still kind of exists, but things like TVs and pocket PCs in particular definitely don't. So the best way to play That Was Then, This Is Now is to kind of talk about a modern day smartphone. And believe it or not, what people may not realize is that you do not necessarily have to spend $1,000 to get a nice smartphone that is very capable of doing lots and lots of different things. The Samsung Galaxy S10s and iPhone 11s of the world are very, very nice, but you can actually spend $100 or $150 and get a really, really nice smartphone. So my tech pick today is the Motorola G7 and G7 Play. Very, very similar devices. The G7 is a little bit more scooped up specs, 4 gigs of memory and a little bit different screen, but essentially the same processing platform. But the G7 is a little nicer. The G7 you can get for about $249. If you're activating it with a service, usually you can get it for about $200. The G7 Play you can actually get for $99 when activated with a carrier, and it is a nice phone. It does a lot of things. It's got a brilliant high definition screen, a decent camera. And you're not breaking the bank. You're paying it out of pocket. You're not spending $50 a month on this massively high end thing that you may or may not need. So I wanted to point that out. Now, Rich, you're an iPhone carrier, right? Which iPhone do you have?
Gosh, it's the 7, I think, at this point.
It's a little bit older one. That is a way you can get a premium smartphone these days for a reasonable cost, is if you get the premium phone that was sold, 3 years ago. So you can go buy an iPhone 8 for a decent price. But this one's kind of like a brand new, out of the box, decent phone. Lisa, what do you carry around?
Oh, I've got the 10.
The iPhone 10?
iPhone 10, yeah.
Also very nice phone, but do you remember how much that was?
No, we have a company plan, so I don't even know what we paid for it. And I got the big display for eyes, and I wanted the good cameras and for photographing, but I don't remember how much it was, but I'll never turn back. I remember we used to have the Motorola flip phones. Do you remember back in the day all the flip phones? And that was
like the Razr.
Razr,
yeah, the Razr, and I had a pink one, I remember. So I loved it. But it's amazing how far, and how, also thinking about how we're streaming video and technology now, not just through the phones. I know we're talking about phones, but I'm also amazed at how the Watchman was sort of like cutting edge in terms of small displays, because now if I wanted to watch A Star Is Born again, I'll just find it on Netflix on an app on my small screen here, and I don't need the large screen anymore. So it's amazing how the 1982 technology was sort of foretelling in terms of size and how far we've come. So, of course, clarity is all different, but still.
Yeah, slightly different animals there with the super high def AMOLED displays there. But mobile displays has a lot. But I find a lot of people don't realize that there was a time when a cheap smartphone, you were making obvious cuts into the quality of the device. Either the camera was terrible, or the screen wasn't good, or it was slower than molasses. And I talked about this one with a little bit of experience, because we recently picked up my daughter her first phone with service, because my gosh, these kids are getting older, and we got her a G7 Play. And I got to tell you, thoroughly impressed with how nice it was. It was fast. It plays games. It has a fingerprint sensor. It's got a beautiful screen, a decent camera that takes nice pictures. And I'm like, wow. And I'm sitting here comparing it to my, $1,000 or $700, whatever I paid for this Samsung Galaxy S8. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe next time I'm just going to go that route because it seems really nice and it does everything. So doesn't have to be a mega expensive phone. So anyway, that's a fun one. The tech pick, the Motorola G7 or G7 Play, and of course Lisa's museum pick, the vintage Watchman from 1982 and the Palm Pilot TX. Rich, if you were going to look into the past and try to predict what happened, I bet you could do that and do a pretty decent job of it. Now, and then I know you're going to look forward and you're 50-50 on what's going to come. Why are you so good at predicting the past anyway? Do you have something that I don't know about?
No, actually, but I'm going to do good on predicting the future this time. Hang on for that because I think I've got it nailed this particular week. But if we're talking about what happened in the past, what happened this week, what you want to do every Friday, you go to ChannelProNetwork.com. You look for our In Case You Missed It post, which is written by ChannelPro's own James Gaskin. We're kind of getting into the end of the year here. Things are slowing down a little bit in the industry, so there actually isn't a ton of news there, but you will see some interesting stuff about a new processor from Intel specifically for quantum computing, which is a technology of great interest to me at least. There's a new leader for the product group at HPE, specifically in charge of the GreenLake platform over there, which is a very strategic one for those folks. And then James will tell you a little bit about something. I'll just let you know basically that if you really, really like Kentucky Fried Chicken, if you're a big KFC fan, boy, why not just bring that to the fireplace? Fire logs from KFC, it turns out, are a thing, and James will tell you all about that this week. Looking ahead to next week, Matt, I can tell you with authority that what's coming is Christmas shopping. And that's just about it, basically, because the conference season is over. There will probably be a little bit of news next week, but it's going to be kind of a slow news week. So just lots of last-minute Christmas shopping next week.
My life is not complete until I get a Kentucky Fried Chicken log. This why didn't this happen earlier?
It's just one of those ideas. Exactly. You hear about it, and it's like, why did we have to wait this long? It just makes a ton of sense.
Run, don't walk, Lisa, to your nearest KFC fireplace.
I don't even know what to say with that. I am speechless.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we are going to wrap it up there for episode 127. A big thank you to Lisa Shorr from Secure Future Tech Solutions and also the image consultant of Shorr Success. Lisa, it is just a joy having you on. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I loved it. It's so much fun to share our stories, to be able to be relatable as an MSP in the industry, and certainly those 5 questions, thank goodness they were what they were. And it's always a pleasure with the two of you. I'm always very impressed by your ability to cover relevant news for our industry. So thanks for having me.
Now, Lisa, if people wanted to get a hold of you or learn more about you or get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Well, there's 2 websites that are probably the easiest way. Secure Future Tech Solutions, my tech business, if you need me and you want to talk about any of our solutions or ideas or brainstorm, please reach out to us. It's securefuturetech.com. And if you're looking for some cultural growth, some image consulting or presentation skills training, phone skills training, that would be Shorr Success. And that's Shorr, SHORR, shorrsuccess.com.
Fantastic. And Rich, for those who want to follow along with us, we cover as Lisa said, the news and stuff every day. In fact, if you go to ChannelProNetwork.com, bookmark it, because we have articles, white papers, resources, downloads, news stories flying down that homepage each and every day with information that you need to keep your business up to date and to grow and be better. So ChannelProNetwork.com is a website. If you want to subscribe to Channel Pro Weekly, that's really the way to do it. Go to iTunes, go to Google Play Podcasts, go to Stitcher, wherever podcasts are aggregated. You should find us there. If you have a favorite podcast app on your phone or tablet that you like, You can, of course, grab an RSS link at any of the show notes pages that we have, ChannelPro Weekly, on the ChannelProNetwork.com website, and that will make the episodes just magically appear. If you do like to watch, we are on YouTube. You can subscribe to us there, but subscribe and you got to hit the bell too, because the subscribe button, it's like, yay, I pressed this red subscribe button, but then like nothing happens. If you want to get notified when we have new shows, that's where you got to hit the bell, and that's what you need to do in order to keep up to date there. If you're going to find us on the social networks, Lisa, you are on the social networks?
I am, absolutely. You can find us on Facebook, both businesses. You can just search Secure Future Tech or Shorr Success on Facebook. You can find both myself or my husband, Eric, TechWise, on LinkedIn. So you can find us there as well. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. So you can find us. Absolutely. Just Google search me.
So keep an eye out for Lisa and all of your favorite social hangouts. Rich, if people wanted to follow us on the social networks, they can find us on Facebook. We're Channel Pro Network there. At Channel Pro SMB on Twitter. We're Channel Pro Network on LinkedIn. Rich, if they want to follow you, where would they go?
They would go to @RichFree.
That's what he is on Twitter. I'm at Matt Whitlock on Twitter if you want to follow me. And if you want to email the show, please, thoughts, suggestions, comments, something you want to talk about, grievances you want to air, personal problems you need help with, want to know what the best shampoo to buy for your loved one this Christmas. Whatever it is, we want to hear from you. Podcast@channelpronetwork.com is the email address. Please make sure that you send us those. And with that, I'd like to say goodbye to everybody, and thanks for listening and watching. See you next week.
Happy holidays.